Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Father Talks podcast. I am here with Mr. Larry Belotta. After Larry is a how do we say this? Well, Larry has discovered after 27 years in a loveless marriage that Larry was not happy, and I am kind of curious to see how this all turned out, how this all came about. So, Larry, if you could, I want to jump right into things because 27 years is a long investment. So I'm not gonna spend a bunch of time, talking about a bunch of random stuff. I really want to hear this story. So if you could please take the floor and tell us how this all came about.
So the story is that I was in a marriage that I did not understand. I was in a marriage with a very strong woman,
Okay.
a very strong woman, and the reason she was a strong woman is because she was raised by parents who raised her with anger, and that
Oh,
was the temperature of her home, an angry home. And I was raised in a shutdown home. It's
mm,
a home where they said things, felt things, and they shut down and didn't process any of it. And so when an angry home meets a shutdown home, it becomes this very unhappy place.
okay.
Okay, so that's so Marcia was my wife. So I entered the marriage when they when they impeach Nixon. Okay,
Okay.
okay, and I come out when they elect the second Bush. So that's the 27 years I'm talking about. And so that time was a time of me deciding that I had to become the learner. I had to learn what she would teach me. And so that's really how I stayed in it. I was able to stay in it. Now, aside from that, remember, we had also had a program that we were both programmed with, which was Stay Married, Stay Miserable. And
Mm,
that program kept us in the place in some really, really tough times. We could not leave because the program is very powerful. And so that way of living where you're learning and so what I'm doing is I'm writing notes to myself on the yellow legal pads, and I've got pads and pads of paper because what I'm doing is I'm trying to teach myself how do I succeed in this very, very hopeless situation.
okay.
So when I was doing that, it was a long, slow process, and it was not pretty, not ever. Okay, so um, what I ended up developing a course. And the course was to teach myself how to become happy in unhappy circumstances.
Okay.
So that's what I had to do. I had to teach myself it. And so when you teach yourself, you really don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it. You're just doing something, and you're all moving in a direction. And direction is, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to become a happy person in an unhappy situation. So
Yeah.
that's why I talk about this idea. It takes one to heal a marriage, and when I talk about it, people struggle with it. What do you mean it takes one? It takes two to tango. They all have that idea. It always takes two in everything, and they think that because they can't get off the idea of it takes two to tango. So why does it take one? It takes one because one person is the person who becomes happy. And when
Mm,
that one person becomes happy, what's happening is this runs into the idea I call the invisible lifestyle. So the invisible lifestyle is called invisible because the word lifestyle is a way of life or a style of living that reflects the values of a person or group. So that's what it is. It's a value system that you get in the childhood, and you get it not because you want it, but you get it because it comes with everything you do when you start growing up. So those 10 years are about the invisible lifestyle.
okay.
So once you have that invisible lifestyle, you now have a value system. And so I have a scale that I've been using for 15 years, which is a 10 to 0 scale. And so 10 is the best place to grow up. And that's where mom and dad love each other and they teach you and they talk to you. And that's a place where you really want to grow up because that's where you get really good values. You get values of loyalty and service and honesty and forgiveness and commitment. All those
Gotcha.
things come in your childhood. So then at the bottom of the scale, that's a different set of values completely.
Okay.
So that's selfishness and lying and gossip and survival and meanness. That's the stuff at the bottom of the scale. And so if you're raised at the top of the scale, you get great values. And your life is good because you have these great values.
Okay.
When you're raised at the bottom of the scale, it's not a happy place. So I was raised in the middle of the scale. So my mom and dad put me right in the middle. And being raised in the middle, I'm in called the twilight zone. That's the twilight zone. That's where you really don't. Nobody raises you. You got
Okay.
to raise yourself, right?
Okay.
And so when your parents are not fully involved in teaching you and talk to you, they gotta do something with you, right? So they put you in the middle of the scale. So either the top, the middle, or the bottom, right? So when you're in the bottom, you're in these survival and gossip and lie, all these really troubling things. So when you realize that what is happening, the things that happened in my childhood are what decides whether I'm a chaos kid or a purpose kid.
Ah, okay.
And if you're a chaos kid, you have chaos all through your life. If you're a purpose kid, you have a purpose all through your life, right? So
Gotcha.
why does parenting matter so much? Because of the invisible lifestyle. It's invisible. You can't see it. You can't know it, right? There's no way to know about the invisible lifestyle. Right. So once we have that lifestyle, once we know what it is, we know where I am on the scale. Well, what if I'm a 10 and I marry a 1? Or what if I'm a 10 and I marry a 2? Right? What's going to happen? Well, that's two value systems that are coming together. Well, once I bring those two value systems together, well, where am I going to get intimacy, love, attention, kindness? Where am I going to get all this stuff? Well, I'm going to get it from my purpose home. And
Mm,
where's she going to get it from her home? Well, she's
mm,
not going to get it. She's not going to give it. She's a chaos kid. And
right.
when a chaos kid is a chaos kid, there's going to be abandonment, abuse, neglect. And that's really what makes a chaos kid, the abandonment, abuse, neglect. So what happens is that he or she follows their emotional condition. So what happens is people become pinballs. That's normally what happens in all the marriages I talk to.
Yeah.
People become pinballs. They're reacting to everything that's happening in the world. And because they're reacting, they can't stop. They can't stop living like a pinball, a complete reactor. So she reacted to him, he's reacting to her. And so now, why does it take one to heal a marriage? Well, why don't we get one person, just one, to stop reacting? Why don't we get one person to not be a reactor, but be a creator and become a person who creates what they want?
Right.
And they do it in their mind. Okay. So the whole idea, I call it breaking Newton's law.
Okay.
What is Newton's law? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's Newton's law. We all know that,
Right.
right? And so that's Newton's law. And as Newton's law, we break Newton's law because now we're not going to react. We're not going to react like we always did, because when we react, we're fulfilling Newton's law when we actually do the reaction that we do,
Mm,
right?
okay.
So what happens is if we're going to break Newton's law, how are we going to do it? We have to learn about the meaning and movie machine. The meaning and movie machine is what begins all behavior. It makes all behavior possible. So the meaning and movie machine is the meaning starts everything. The meaning starts everything. Why? Because the meaning is connected to the movie. What's the movie? The movie is the world. The world is the movie. And the movie is what's happening in the world, like all the stuff that's going on, right? So that's the movie, right? So from the movie, we have to get the meaning. So what does this mean? So when you decide to change the meaning, you're starting to change your world, because
Ah,
you're starting to
okay.
see that the meaning is what the world means, not the situation. I don't have to react to the situation. I don't have to react in my chaos. I'm going to react in my breaking Newton's law way of living. So when I break Newton's law, I'm not going to live in for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. I'm not going to live that way. I'm
Okay.
going to live I'm going to start to create new meaning. What new meaning does is it creates a new movie, which then creates a new feeling. The new feeling creates a new attitude. A new attitude creates a new action. That's the breaking Newton's law system of living without Newton. I don't need to live in Newton's law. I
Right.
can break Newton's law, and when I break Newton's law, I'm going to start living in the meaning in the movie machine.
Oh,
Because
sweet.
when I start controlling the meaning of the movie machine, everything starts to become better. Everything starts to become more believable. Why? Because I'm starting with the meaning. I start with the meaning. The meaning is everything.
Gotcha.
Because what is the meaning doing? It's taking what the movie's giving us, and we're creating meaning. I create it over and over again, and I keep on remembering. I believe in what what the meaning is going to be. I want the meaning to be this. I'm going to make it this, right? So I tell this story called the cruise ship analogy, and the cruise ship analogy is the idea of how do we break Newton's law. So the cruise ship analogy goes like this: so you're a cruise ship, and
Okay.
you have a rat on your ship, and the rat on your ship is there, but you don't know it's there. And so then you marry somebody, and they have a ship, and they have a rat. They don't know it's there, right? So we have two rats, we have two ships, right? So you're living this way, and what's happening is the ships are separating. Why are they separating? Because the rats make them separate, right?
Mm,
So as the rats are separating the ships, you don't know it, and so eventually you go to a seminar, you learn that you might have a rat. So you go to the trouble to find the rat and get it off the ship. And once you do this, you're now starting to change what's happening in the ships. Because
mm,
now when your rat is off the ship, now there's only one rat on her ship and no rat on your ship. And
right.
now, well, what's that idea built on? It's built in the idea it takes two rats to push apart two ships.
Right.
Okay. Because what that is that's called against energy. I'm against everything. I'm mad at everything. I'm fed up with everything. I'm sick of everything. Right. Against energy is when you generate that. Boy, can you imagine being a reactor who's reacting and against everything? Right. That's a really bad place to be.
Okay. So
So in the cruise ship analogy, the ship is separating, but when you take your rat off your ship, the ship's separation slows down.
right,
And
because
that's one of the things I've seen when people are learning these ideas, the separation starts to slow down. And now the divorce is not going so fast. It's not driving at the maximum speed because it takes two rats to push apart two ships,
right.
right? So that's the analogy of the rat. So
Okay.
once you know that the rat is there, now you start to realize like, um, I need to start to focus on getting out of the ocean. And so this is another analogy. So the ocean is against energy, where
Right.
all the sharks are, right? I got to get out of the ocean and I got to get onto the beach because when I get onto the beach, there's no sharks there, right?
Right.
So getting that visual of no sharks, that's a very calm palm trees, relaxing sand, right? Kind of thing. And so I start to visualize myself on the beach. And when I visualize myself on the beach, now I can say, oh, I don't have to stay in here on this beach. And so I can do is I can go through the steps of starting to tell a story that's going to make my life better.
Okay.
And so one of the ideas that we use in my course is what I used in my life, which is isn't it great that? Isn't it great that? So when you start thinking about isn't it great that? Isn't it great that? What are you going to say after that? Well, you're going to break Newton's law. You're not going to do reaction. You're going to isn't it great that she is healing and feeling better about me? Isn't it great that I'm kind and loving and caring? Isn't it great that I have a better, nicer, more positive personality? Isn't it great that she's responding to me in a better way? Right? Isn't it great that I feel like a better man than I ever have before? Right? Isn't it great that what is that phrase? That phrase is the anticipation of what's coming. Isn't it
Right.
great that dot dot dot, right? That's what makes the idea hold together because that's telling a different story, a story that you really care about, right?
Huh.
And
Okay.
so all
So
these, you know how positive everything is in your
yeah.
world, right?
Oh,
so,
sometimes. Sometimes.
so Michael, you're always aiming towards positiveness. You're always aiming in a positive world, and so the idea of telling a better story is the idea of living in a better world, and you're
Gotcha.
living in a better world because you're telling a better story.
Oh. Okay. So let me ask you a question. What are the warning signs a marriage is drifting into danger long before the word divorce is even spoken?
Okay, so now we have the idea of real love.
Okay.
And so when we have the idea of real love, what is real love? Real love is kindness, fun, good humor, playfulness, and goodwill, right? Those ideas are very fragile.
Right.
Kindness, fun, humor, playfulness, and goodwill are just very soft and they're kind of like Tinkerbell. Disney illustrates Tinkerbell, a little fairy that darts around, right? Those ideas are like Tinkerbell because Tinkerbell is a very light, fragile thing.
Okay.
Kindness, fun, humor, playfulness, and goodwill can disappear very fast. You can just get a piece of bad news and it will disappear. You can have a bad mood and it will disappear.
Right.
You can struggle with something that you can't stop struggling with, and it will disappear. So, what is the first sign that you're starting to lose what keeps a marriage together? You're losing Tinkerbell. You're losing
Mm.
kindness, fun, humor, playfulness, and goodwill. And when that goes away, it starts all the bad effects.
Okay.
And so if you start to realize, I think I need to hold on to kindness and fun and humor and playfulness and goodwill. I need to just memorize the words because
Right.
it lightens me up. It makes me feel better. And besides that, I have Tinkerbell as long as it sits here, right? Because it's very fragile. And
Right.
since
But
it's so fragile, it can disappear.
can we? Can only one of us maintain that magic, though? You know, like if I am trying to hold on to these things, but my significant other is just rejecting them in every way, how do you how do you keep that alive?
So what we have is a spouse, and what the spouse is doing. Because remember what the spouse is. The
Yes.
spouse is the reactor.
Okay.
The reactor has to react, has to. And so
Got it.
as you start feeling happier, as you start dwelling on ideas like kindness, fun, humor, playfulness, and goodwill, as you start to dwell on that, the reactor reacts.
Hmm.
And so when you first start it, the reactor doesn't react in a good way because the reactor doesn't believe it. You already know that when you're in a tough relationship, the person is going to be negative and
Right.
critical and blaming and fault finding, right? They're going to live that way because they think I need to cry out for love. And the way I'm going to cry out for love is I'm going to destroy everything. That's how I'm going to cry out for love, right?
Ah,
And so
okay.
that's what they're doing. They're crying out for love by destroying everything. So while they're destroying everything, your mission internally is to change what you believe and what you think. And so
Okay.
when you focus ideas, and I'm using this Tinkerbell idea, the Tinkerbell idea is a very fragile idea because it's built on kindness, fun, humor, playfulness, and goodwill. And as you say the words, you start to dwell on the ideas.
Right.
And when you dwell on the ideas, you can start to feel some of them. You can start to feel like, oh, this is the way I want to live. This is where I want to be,
Right.
right? And so there's a firestorm outside. And there's a firestorm outside. I've got to literally, I'm taking bullets, like those are emotional bullets. And so I have to diffuse those emotional bullets.
Okay.
Well, can you imagine that kindness, fun, humor, playfulness, just the words? The words are energies, and they stay with you as you continue to say them and you continue to repeat them. You'll feel the feelings of the words, and as you start to feel better, you start to give off that energy. That's why it takes one. It
Okay.
takes one and a reactor. It takes one and a reactor over and over and over again. You got to believe that the reactor is always going to be a reactor. And when the day comes when they react in a good way, why'd they do that? Because they're reacting to you. They're reacting to what you believe, what you think, what you feel.
Okay. All right. I mean, I can see how I can see how that would work, how it could be beneficial. My concern is, I guess, is that how many men or how many people, male or female, can keep up that positive energy, how long they can keep that up when their significant other is the negative person. Can they keep it up long enough to change that, that negative person? So they start seeing, hey, there is hope. You know what? He or she is trying, for all intents and purposes, for this conversation, we're talking about men, you know, are we going to keep trying? What's our limit? You know?
So when you think the idea
Okay.
of a limit, when you think about the idea of a limit, when you think of the idea of time, how long can I stand it? When you think any idea like that, what are you doing? You're stepping into a world where you're moving into a life of fear, right?
Okay.
So we have either fear or love. So
Right.
and the idea is we have to leave fear and move to love, but the way we get to love is get to peace. We
Mm,
can't get to love until we get to peace, and so we got to get to peace first. And so that means I have to find ways to find peace myself. If I don't find peace myself, I can't really get to love. So
right.
I have to get there first. And so by thinking about peace, dwelling on peace, focusing on the ideas of kindness, fun, humor, playfulness, and goodwill. That's the Tinkerbell of real love.
Hmm.
Real love is a lighter, happier place. And as you start to think that, you start to think of the ideas of um, of romance and the ideas of kindness. Just
Okay.
like those two ideas, romance and kindness. Like when you start just to dwell on the ideas, I love a life of romance and kindness. Like,
Right.
wow, even if we step away from Tinkerbell, just the idea of romance and kindness, right? But what I'm not doing is I'm not thinking of the dark fear thoughts of
Okay.
how much time can I stand it? What's wrong with this person, right? Let me analyze this. Let me focus on what's wrong. There's no solution in getting focused on what's wrong. You can't look at something broken and think you're going to fix it,
Right.
especially in relationships. You can't dwell on what's wrong and find something right. You
Okay.
can't live in the darkness and find the light. You just can't do it. Nobody's ever done it.
Right. Okay. So moving on to betrayal, affairs, and trust repair. What's the most damaging mistake people make right after discovering betrayal or an affair?
So what they do is they dwell on what happened.
Hmm.
That's the first thing they do. They dwell on what happened. Just think about the idea of dwelling on what happened. If you just start like, I have to think about something at this moment. I
Hmm.
found out about an affair. I found about a big betrayal. That's the word they like to use. It's a
Right.
romantic word, betrayal, right? I found out this person's not loyal to me. This person's not choosing me. This person's not choosing me first. So now I'm at this line. And at that line, I have to just make a decision. What am I going to do? Am
Right.
I going to think about what's going wrong or am I going to think about what's going right? And what am I intending to go right? What do I want to make right? See, it's the choice. What am I going to choose? Am I going to choose to live in this attitude of darkness or am I going to choose to live in this attitude of light? So now here's the problem with the world. When the world goes wrong, our five senses get involved.
Okay.
Our five senses, sight, sound, taste, touch. And so when those five senses get involved, I believe in the five senses. If we didn't have five senses, I wouldn't even know I had a problem. I
Okay.
wouldn't even know, right? There's no like, no, everything's fine, everything's wonderful, right? I don't have any five senses to tell me anything's wrong, right?
Right.
So if you lived in a world without five senses, you wouldn't even know anything was wrong. So you're living at this moment when something bad happens, when something goes really wrong, you want to dwell on the five senses. And
Okay.
when you dwell on the five senses, now you can't do anything else except to think what the five senses tell you. And what
Oh,
the five senses tell you is everything is going to hell. And now that's all you're thinking about. Like now you've got to make a decision. All right, if I go to fear, I'm lost.
okay.
Now everything from here on gets bad. It doesn't get better. It doesn't get smoother. It just keeps getting wrong. And because it becomes so wrong, I've got to make a decision. Either I'm going to start to live in the positive world of my mind, or I'm going to live in the negative world of fear. And it's
Okay.
literally my big decision. And everybody's got to make that decision.
Right.
And everybody doesn't make it. And popularly, everybody chooses to go wrong. They
Right.
choose to go to fear.
Right. I guess. I guess for me, I would. I don't know how I could look past the betrayal. You know, but I do understand that if you decide that, hey, there's a betrayal in our relationship, but I do want things to work. So
Here's a new interpretation.
okay.
She's calling out for love.
Okay.
She's calling out for love. That's the interpretation.
Okay.
Right? She's cheating on you. Why is she cheating on you? Because she's calling out for love. And so if you dwell on the idea she's calling out for love, she's calling me for love, like what am I going to come back with?
Right.
It's not going to be fear. If she's calling out for love and I give back fear, I've made a terrible life.
Right. So how do we how do we combat the fear? Because I can tell you that that would be something always leering in the back of my mind. As much as you're trying to make things work, it's gonna linger.
You said a key word, combat,
Ah. Okay.
fight, be
Okay.
against fear, right? Why? Why'd you say that? Because it's a natural thing. The fight, fight, fight. The
Right.
war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war, right? All wars do not work.
Okay.
All wars do not work. Every government screws up that. Nobody gets it right because there is no darkness in solving a problem. You can't go to a wrong place and look for a right place. It doesn't work. You've got
Okay.
to go to a right place and look for a hopeful place, a better place with better thought. And that's where the solution is going to be. It
Okay.
can't be in what's going wrong.
All right.
So,
I can understand that. I can understand that. I mean, and again, the part of me that is like, I'm thinking about this, and everything in me that is there's red lights going off. Everything is flashing. Like error, error, error.
but that's screaming to grab you and take you into fear.
Yes. Okay. So we'll keep that in mind. I don't know if I mean, fortunately for me, I'm in a pretty good place. So it's
But
not something. Yes.
you remember the wrong times.
Yes. I absolutely do. So I will definitely keep those things in mind. And that would be some of the advice I try to give out later on, to other people. So talking to midlife crisis and childhood, what are the clearest red flags that a spouse has entered a midlife crisis?
So picture this.
Okay.
You meet a girl and you're getting along really good because she's showing her charismatic side.
Okay.
And she's showing you because she's likable and fun and enjoyable and spontaneous, right? And so are you, right? So you're passing these little stories back and forth,
Okay.
and then you ask a question, and you say, "When you think about all your success in life, how much would you credit to your mom and dad?"
Hmm.
Just out of the blue, you just ask it, like, right? And then in your mind, when you said dad, you start counting 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Okay, that means you've given that person 3 seconds to respond,
Mhm.
right? If you hear anything that's not a fast, spontaneous, oh my God, I thank my parents for everything. They gave me everything. I can't even think of all the things that are so wonderful that they've given me. Right, that's the response you're looking for,
Right.
because that's the response of a purpose kid. But any other response that's 2 seconds or 3 seconds, and you get a response like, "Boo, um, well, uh, I I don't know." See, what is that? I just gave you the response, right?
Right. That.
It sounds like a confused, conflicted
Yeah. It sounds like a little bit
response,
of a
right?
red flag.
Right? Well, what they're really saying? They're not telling you the truth. They're
R-
telling you they're trying to come up with a story to make it look better than it is. Right?
Okay.
So when that 3 seconds passes and you don't have a confident, certain answer
Okay.
of excitement and thankfulness and appreciation, that means that what's in the childhood is there and it's not going to be happy. It's not going to be good. That
Okay.
means it's a chaos kid. And so that means they know there's a chaos kid. So now we're meeting the guy and girl are meeting each other for the first time. He asks the question and then he gets the sign that, oh, this is a chaotic childhood. And that means in a chaotic childhood, that means all the chaos, all the ideas that are buried in the mind are going to come out when you marry her. And not
Mm.
only are you going to marry her, you're going to marry her whole family. And you're going to marry the family where the chaos was born,
Right.
right? And so you start realizing, if I end this, this would be the time.
Right.
This would be the time to end it, right? But people don't end it. And the reason they don't end it is because something holds them, something calls them, something attracts them. Somebody says, "Oh, you need to stay for this," right? Because what happens when a person from a higher place on the scale
Mhm.
marries a person from the lower place on the scale, then purpose is marrying chaos.
Okay.
Why? So purpose can help heal chaos. But what people do, the people I talk to, they're not trained to marry a chaos kid.
Right.
They're not trained. They have no training. And because they have no training, they don't know what they're getting into. And so, but my advice is you got to leave early on when you get a chaos childhood. You get the 3 second answer, like 3 seconds,
Right.
it's trouble.
And I mean, this is good to know. I mean, these are things I mean, again, I'm constantly learning something new, and I appreciate that. With especially with all my guests and that. But the understanding people's upbringing and how it will relate to you and yours is a new concept for me.
The idea of that you marry a family, you don't marry a girl.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, really? Because
Right.
I did not sign up for that, but I understand. So if we're you said it only takes one. With that, you said it only takes one person to heal a marriage. Excuse me. What does that actually mean without enabling or tolerating abuse?
So it revolves around the idea of where your mind is.
Okay.
And that doesn't matter where your behavior is. It matters where your mind is. The mind leads the body. And
Yeah.
if the mind leads the body and you believe the mind leads the body, that means the star of the show is where the mind is.
Mm,
Where the body is a minor thing. But the mind is, that's where we're going. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to maintain an intimate, loving relationship.
okay.
So if I'm raised in a better home and I get better values and I marry a girl who comes from more troubled values, I know I'm going to marry that family. I'm going to marry that trouble.
Okay.
And so now I step into it. If I'm young, if I'm in my 20s or early 30s, um, I don't learn a lot. I don't really get the whole idea of being a real positive person. I don't understand that that's even important, right?
Right.
I just think that I should just react to the world how I feel. I react how I feel. And how I feel is I feel bad. I feel mad. I feel frustrated. I feel angry, right? And I just let it out. I let it out over and again because I'm a reactor. But I'm marrying a reactor. I'm a
Right.
reactor marrying a reactor. Well, what's going to come of that? I'm not living in my mind. I'm just living in my body. I'm just living in my reaction system. I'm
Okay.
responding to the five senses. I don't have a future that's going to be happy for me because I'm relying on somebody else to give me something. I'm
Right.
relying on somebody else to make me feel happy. And how many people have done that? Oh, maybe billions.
Yeah.
We
I would definitely say
we
billions.
we've all said, "I want somebody else to make me happy." What's the Jerry Maguire line? "You complete me?
Yes.
You complete me?" That's like, "You complete me." No, you can't live like that. You
No.
can't live like a "you complete me."
So I've always been taught that nobody can make you happier, unless you can't be loved unless you love yourself.
That's right.
You know, and if you genuinely cannot love yourself, how can you expect anybody else to? Or if you are not happy with yourself, how can anybody else make you happy?
Well, that's the logic that makes lots of sense when you hear it,
Yeah.
but in practice, that's actually what we're talking about. In practice, what happens? In practice, what happens is I lean to the negative in practice.
Hmm.
I lean to the negative in ideas. I lean to the negative in reaction. I lean to the negative over and over again. And if I can't stop that, I've got to do something to change it. And
Okay.
so who wants to change it? Who wants to live in the Tinkerbell way of life,
Should be
right?
all of us.
Where, kindness, fun, good humor, playfulness, and goodwill, right? Well, how much can I do it, right? And so it becomes a matter of how strong you are. And what I've realized is people who are raised on a value system that gives them the idea of strength, they kind of admire a positive way of thinking.
Right.
They admire it, and because they admire it, they can latch on to it. They can break Newton's law. They can, instead of every reaction creates an equal and opposite reaction, they're not living like that. They're living
Right.
like for every reaction creates a equal and opposite reaction. For every action, I create an equal and positive reaction. Not an opposite reaction, but a
Right.
positive reaction. I'm
So
going to break Newton's law that way.
okay, so essentially you're saying, so no matter how negative, if we're receiving a negative action, we need to try to continue to react positively. By reacting positively, we're kind of breaking that cycle of just the back and forth.
Because we have ideas.
Okay.
We have ideas. And what are the ideas? I'm living in a positive world. I'm living in love. I'm not living in fear. I'm living in love. That's a positive idea.
Hmm.
But you got to believe in that positive idea. There's got to be a reason why you believe in that positive idea. Why do you believe that you can live in love and not live in fear? You
Mm.
got to admire it. You got to like it. You got to be drawn to it. You got to be interested in it, right? Well, who watches podcasts? People who are longing for positivity.
Right.
That's who watches podcasts.
Yeah.
Like negative people don't watch podcasts. Right? Because, we're torn. We've got a rat, right? We've got a rat in our life, and the rat's always trying to get us to live in the negative, right?
Right.
But when you admire the positive, when you admire the glowing ideas of the podcast world, and the podcast world is big, it's loaded with people who are dwelling on positive things. You're going to be admiring it and choosing it, and you
Right.
choose it in your mind. You choose it in your mind. You don't choose it in the body. You don't choose it in the five senses. You choose it in your mind.
Okay.
And once you make that choice, you not you stick to what you believe in.
Okay.
What do I believe in? I got to create the meaning in the movie. I create a meaning of this is good. I accept it. I like it. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be right. What's that going to do? Is it going to create a feeling? What's the feeling going to do? The feeling is going to create an attitude. The attitude is going to create an action. That's the change of the meaning in the movie machine.
Oh.
And if you're
Okay.
living in that meaning machine, you know that the meaning in the movie creates everything. I have to react to this movie of my life, and I have to react it in the best possible way I can. And
Okay.
now I've just given you a real positive attitude spin on that, right?
Yeah.
That
No,
was
that's great. That's great.
right, very positive thing, right? But people who have a cynical side, their rat side, they don't think that way. They think like the rat thinks, because
Yeah.
the rat can think, right? And once it's that's so corny, that's so stupid, I don't like that, right? So they have these negative reactions, right? But you want to move and say, what I like to say to the rat is cancel that, because that's a thought. The
Right.
rat's thought is a thought that can be canceled. And so you cancel that, right? And when you cancel it, now you can choose a positive idea again. And so you
Okay.
cancel the rat and you choose a positive idea. Cancel the rat, choose a positive idea. And so without that canceling, you can't move to the positive idea, because you're
Okay.
going to get sucked into the negative idea.
So you said that you are in the middle of the scale, like a five. You
Yes.
you essentially took care of yourself. So for those people in that five range, can they find that very same joy and happiness that or take that back? Can they find their way out of that upbringing on their own, or is this something you know that we have to physically really be thinking about actively every day to make changes?
So think about the people in the middle, and the
Okay.
people in the middle are in the middle.
Yes.
They're below the best ideas, the best values,
Okay.
and they're above the worst values. They're
Gotcha.
in the middle, and as being in the middle, they can choose anything they want to choose. So if they're guided by the rat, they can choose the dark side.
Right.
If they're guided by their own higher ideas, they can choose the high side. They
Okay.
can literally go into the values of the higher end of the scale. And they can choose kindness and love and forgiveness and commitment and honesty. All these ideas that are positive, all these ideas are based on love. They can choose those because they're in the middle. Now,
Gotcha.
somebody who's raised at the bottom, they got a bigger chore.
Yeah.
Like they got to go from the bottom to the top,
Oh,
right? That's not going to happen real fast, right?
right.
But
Okay.
they got to make that choice. But when you're raised in the middle, you're raised in the middle of the value system. And so the middle of the value system is a mix of the bottom and the top.
Right.
And that's why when you think like I'm in the middle, I can choose the top. And that's why I like to talk about. I like to choose the top.
Right. Oh yeah. I would definitely rather go to the top than the bottom.
Yeah, but it's a choice. I got to make the choice, and I got to make it in my mind. I make the choice in my mind, and I choose the meaning, and I choose what everything means, and I choose that meaning. And when I choose that meaning, I get that chain of events.
Yes.
The next thing that happens is I get a feeling. And after the feeling, I get a belief. And once I get a belief, I get an attitude. Once I get an attitude, I get an action, right? I know that's going to happen. And all I have to do is I have to keep on choosing that meaning.
Choosing. Yeah. You continue to choose the positive. The more you choose the positive, you become more of the choices you make.
Because what really gets you actually interested and keep on choosing positive is you get a reward.
Yes.
The reward of choosing the positive literally keeps you coming back for more,
Right.
right? Do you know the rat has a system of reacting and getting penalty and getting paid? I call it drugs. It's
Okay.
a drug system, right? So the rat has a drug system, and so the drug is it has a side effect. So you
Okay.
take a drug, you get a side effect, and so the side effect is a high, like a high of like 10 seconds.
Hmm.
That's all you get is 10 seconds. Because after that 10 seconds is over, penalty the whole time, right?
Hmm.
So the drug is given to you like the drug of anxiety.
Right.
And when you get the drug of anxiety, you get a little high to just feeling anxious. But then after the anxiousness, the reward is over, you get this penalty. And so that's the reward system of the rat. And all of us have a rat. We've all got a rat, and we've got to leave the rat. We've got to get the rat off the ship. That's why I like the analogy, because you're a ship and you have a rat. And the
Right.
rat can be found and can be removed. And the idea of removing a rat from a ship is a really good visual. It's a really good way to think
Yeah.
of yourself. It's like, I got my rat off my ship.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
don't have to deal with that
yeah,
anymore.
I don't like the thought of a rat running around my ship while I'm
Yes,
sleeping. Yeah,
that's right.
my luck, it'll be running across my face or something. So yeah, there'll be none of that. So, uh, what are three behaviors that push your spouse further away without you realizing it?
So the first one would be reaction. Okay.
Okay.
The first behavior is reacting. And why are you reacting? You're reacting because you're living on the five senses. You're living in the five senses. You're saying, these five senses give me all my information.
Hmm.
I need to get my information from what it tells me, and what it tells me, I believe. And so that's the first problem,
Okay.
living like a reactor. And when
Okay.
you're living like a reactor, you're not going to make anything better because you're living in reaction. How could you make anything better? How could you make an improvement? And so, when we talk about the body tries to make positive choices. Like, what's a favorite? Oh, I go to the gym. That's a big favorite for people. They like to
Yes.
bring the body to the gym. Why? Because the body now goes into a place where there's a like a trainer or some influence, somebody who's socially influencing you.
Yeah.
And when you go there, you're suddenly in a like a place where the body has to do things so you can stimulate your five senses and you can get out of your bad mood, right?
Uh,
That's real popular,
right.
right?
Yeah. I go to the gym. That's where I deal with all my
That's right.
cortisol issues.
That's
You know?
right, because you're really relying on the body to do it,
Yeah.
right? But if you start to rely on the mind to do everything, the mind moves towards love. And when you just the idea of moving towards love, moving towards peace, moving towards love, that's a better idea.
Right.
It's a better idea that I can start to feel better because I have better thoughts. I create
Okay.
better meaning. I create better meaning. I create better thoughts. My chain is going to be better. I'm going to have a better feeling. I'm going to have a better belief. I'm going to have a better attitude. I'm going to have a better action. Those are going to be more positive because my mind is positive. And so, when you think about the three worst mistakes, right? People are really drawn to the idea, the three worst mistakes, right? And so I don't like to dwell on those kinds of things,
Right.
because what I'm doing is I'm telling other people to dwell on the three worst mistakes. Here's you I have to identify the three worst mistakes, right?
Okay.
And once you dwell on the three worst mistakes, all of a sudden the three worst mistakes have a way of hanging around you, because
Okay.
the thought of the idea of three worst mistakes is hanging around you, right? It's a better idea to think, what is the most hopeful thing I can do? What would I rather have? What would I rather feel? What would I like if I felt myself as a happy person? What would I feel like? And
Okay.
so, what was a happy moment? What was my greatest moment in life? You start moving in positive ways in your mind,
Hmm.
everything starts to change.
Okay.
And just you don't have to rely on going to the gym to get yourself shaken out of a mood swing.
Right. Okay. So moving on, I want to talk about your book. I know
Okay.
you didn't want to promote it, but I do. So
Okay.
so let's talk about the book before we close.
Okay. So the book is called "This Is Not the Woman I Married."
Okay.
Now, the title comes from. So I talked for many years on my calls about guys who are married to women who come from chaos.
Okay.
and they didn't know they came from chaos. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know what chaos was, and they had discovered that they woke up in this chaos marriage, right? And they realized they married a family with the whole value system, a
Right.
painful, troubling value system, right? And so I had to write a book about it because I had to explain to the guy, here's what happened. Here's how you feel. Here's why you feel that way. Because
Gotcha.
she feels that bad, that's going to mean you're going to feel that bad. And so if you're a reactor, living with a reactor, what hope do you have? You have no hope.
Right.
There's no way to see yourself as a better person living as a reactor. And so I established the word pinball to sum up the idea of a reactor. What's a pinball? Pinball bounces off every
Right.
stimulation, right?
Right.
And so and no one can predict where a pinball goes. No one, right? Since no one can predict where a pinball goes, anything is possible, right? Any bad, crazy thing is possible. And I've heard some stories of people who are zeros married to zeros.
Right.
I've had people like that in my course. The zeros married to zeros. Can you imagine two real serious reactors
Right.
dedicated to reaction, and they react to the next reaction, to the next reaction, and they can't stop, right? So what I've seen as I teach people these ideas is they actually decide I was a zero, but I'm going to start living like a nine.
Okay.
The idea of living like a nine is the idea of like, I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to live in a better life. I'm going to live in a better way, right? I'm going to live like a nine. And so there's a lot of ideas that move you into the idea of I was a zero. That's where my parents put me, but now I'm going to live like a nine. And so as I live with like a nine, my wife, who's a zero, is going to start following me. She follows me. And the idea that you're leading a life of improvement makes you feel better about yourself. You like who you are when you start to live like that. I'm going to live like a nine. Like I was born at a five, but
Right.
I'm living like a nine.
Yeah, I see it, and this is making me kinda think of where I was, and, I'm gonna say I'm a probably a hard 5 as well, and
Okay.
I come from a family where, my parents worked a lot. It wasn't that they weren't loving and whatnot, but they were loving by being providers,
Yes. Okay.
and, my parents were, you know, gone for work early in the morning, home from work later in the evening, and we saw them we hung out at dinner time, we did homework, and that was kinda it,
So, Michael, the test then becomes what were they like on the weekend?
On the weekends, okay, well, depends. If we're talking during the school year, my parents, every weekend, we'd occasionally get out, do some things, um, but it was always, getting prepared for the next week,
Okay.
so cleaning the house, getting laundry done,
Okay.
cutting the grass, things like that. It was very mechanical,
Was there any teaching, talking, sharing,
not
feelings?
n- definitely not feelings. Definitely
Okay.
not feelings.
No feelings.
No, no.
So what you have in your mind is that everything is about work and
Yeah,
nothing is about life and emotion.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
that is something I've kinda, I chose to change on my own, so as I became a dad, as I, got into different relationships, and then when I got married, I said, "You know what? I need something different than what I had," and I wanted my kids to have something different from what I had. I was still very I was still very strict, but I always tried to always let my kids know how much I loved them. I always tried to be present for everything that they did. My daughter was in the softball. I didn't know jack squat about softball, but I learned because I wanted to be able to be present. My other daughter
see,
in the dance, I know listen, I don't know anything about a pirouette, but when she's talking about it, I know what it is. You know?
so this is because this is father talks. Um, I want to give my definition of a real dad.
Okay.
Okay? A real dad definition. I'm consistently tough but fair. I take a genuine interest in the challenges, opportunities, and joys of each of my unique children.
Mm,
That's the real dad definition. Okay.
outstanding. I love that. I may have to steal that. I may have to steal that. That's definitely going on a t-shirt somewhere.
Okay. But but
Um,
but that's what you're sounding like. You're
yeah,
sounding like a real dad.
Yeah, and you know what? It's been a process, and I'm still learning. There are some relationships in my family, that we're still working on repairing, but I'm aware of it, you know, and I understand that not everything is my fault, and it's not all my job to fix. Some things do require work on both people, but I'm willing to do the work, you know, So right time, right place, and I understand that it's a process. So hopefully we all get there.
So, so I spent a lot of years interviewing people, and the reason I came up with that title is that's what they told me. This
Okay.
is not the woman I married. That's what they told me, and that's why that's the title. Like, why would you say this is not the woman I married? Because what happens is when these chaos kids meet, they take their charisma that they have typically,
Mhm.
and they show it. And they show themselves as this loving, positive, likable, enjoyable girlfriend
Yes.
that feels really good. And then they think, "Wow, I like that a lot. I'm gonna get that forever."
Yes.
No, you're not gonna get it forever. That's what this is not the woman I married. Why do you not gonna get the woman you married? Because this is not the woman you married. You married the chaos kid.
Yeah.
The chaos kid, because in the background is chaos. That's what you need to know, and that's what this book is. This book is an educator to
Yeah.
say, a lot of people don't know that there's a whole chaos world there. They don't know that they're marrying a family of chaos. They don't know this stuff, and nobody's teaching it, and nobody likes to think about it.
Yeah, I think most people would be fearful to hear it,
Yeah.
or than the people in these situations. I've got a friend that I really want to hear this episode, so I'm gonna make sure I point him in that direction because he is definitely living with a chaos kid, and I want nothing but good things for him. Their kids are almost all grown up and everything, and
Mhm.
God, I hope that they can figure it out. You know, but
But that it makes perfect sense. It
yeah,
makes perfect sense. If one person is involved in a chaos childhood where
yes,
there's abandonment, abuse, and neglect in all its forms, physical and emotional, what good can come of that? What Just be logical for a second. What good can come of marrying a chaos family? Like, what could I expect? What could I actually ask for that to be?
yeah,
Right?
yeah. I don't know, but again, had I've known this, you know, about this chaos kid, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I might have saved myself some time. Like, hey, I need to bail on this right now. Pull that ejector seat because yeah. But
Yeah.
it it is what it is, and I'm happy that what I've gone through the things that I've gone through. It's made me the person I am today, and I wouldn't change anything because then I wouldn't be this guy. So
That's what the great people say. That's what they all say.
yeah, I'm
It
happy.
it
I'm
it
happy.
is what it is, and I'm glad that I became the person I became, and all this was required.
And I genuinely mean that. I've done some questionable things in my lifetime, but I've been able to regret those things, and I recognize that I didn't like the feeling of the things that I've done in the past,
Mhm.
and so now I'm I'm not gonna ever allow those things to happen again. And
Okay.
so, Larry, hey, thank you so much
Period.
for coming on the show. Again, hey, ladies and gentlemen, the book is Not the Woman I Married.
This is
It's
not the
Not the
woman I
Woman I
married.
Married.
Yeah, yeah.
It is on sale now. You can find it where at?
Amazon.
Amazon. Hey, all right.
The easy answer.
Hey, I love it. Larry, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Alright, thanks, Michael.
Hey, take care of
This is
yourself.
great. Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye bye.